Parties have been sworn in, Your Honor. You may be seated. Folks, have a seat.
Miss Neville, Miss Hubel?
Yes.
Is your former daughter-in-law?
Correct.
She and your son have been divorced for 5 years? How many children do you have?
Just one.
How old is that child?
He's 9.
All right, now, Miss Neville, I have a few questions for you. While Miss Hubel was married to your son, did you get along?
Yeah.
Did she come over to your house for dinner?
Well, actually, they lived with me till he was almost 2.
So, she lived with you?
Correct.
Must have gotten along.
Yes, we did.
And when they moved out into their own place, did they still come back with your grandson?
Correct. I babysat him when they worked, whenever they went out.
But then the marriage went south.
Correct.
And it is your claim that your former daughter-in-law has embarked upon a campaign of harassment, slander, defamation of your character that has gone on for a very long time. You want her to pay for that. Ms. Hubel says quite the contrary. When she was in the midst of a custody battle with your son, you called Child Protective Services on her often. You've harassed her over the years with complaints to Child Protective Services and the police.
Oh, yes.
And as a result of that, she's filed a counterclaim. When did the trouble start with Miss Hubel?
My son was taking my younger son, Dylan, and Jeffrey back to drop him off at his mother's work, the daycare. I was in between my bus routes. I'm a school bus driver. It was pouring down rain. He doesn't drive. So I ran down and gave them a ride up the hill about 1,500 feet to the daycare and dropped him off in front. And my grandson was ecstatic. Grandma dropped him off in the bus. I wasn't on my route. He ran in and I saw him gather all the kids that came to the window and they're all waving at me. So I smiled and waving at him. She walked over and slapped him and told him to get away from the window. I'm sorry. My older son was there, and they turned from the window. Her and the employees that were friends of hers said, "Let's call the school district and get her in trouble." I didn't know what was going on at the time. I went back on my route. I get a phone call on my bus. My supervisor goes, "Debbie, what's going on?" I go, "I don't know what happened." She said, "Some lady called and said you kidnapped her kid on her bus." And I said, "No, the only thing I did was pick up my grandson and my son." I was mortified.
So that's when the trouble started. What happened with that incident, Miss Hubel?
Actually, what had happened was, after numerous amount of times of her dropping Jeffrey off on the school bus without permission, I had called the school district and spoke to her supervisor, with whom I have a letter stating that I was not harassing in any way, and that she was spoken to and told that he was not allowed to ride that school bus because he was not assigned that.
Okay. Had you, in the past, told your mother-in-law that you didn't want him riding the school bus?
No, we were not to be speaking at that time.
Why not?
There was orders.
So that the trouble started before that?
Oh, yes.
Well, then that's what I'm asking. I want to know when the trouble started.
The problem started actually before I left Joshua, my ex-husband. Probably it was the first time that he was arrested for assaulting me. My son was 2 at the time. From that point on, there was no kindling of the relationship with me and Debbie.
Okay. How many times had he been arrested for assaulting you?
Twice for assaulting me. The last time he slammed me into a wall and tore my rotator cuff, and I had to have surgery.
Has he been convicted on...
He sure has.
Did he serve any jail time?
Yes, he did.
How long?
He was sentenced to 30 days, but he ended up having an ankle bracelet because of whatever kind of medication he was taking. They wouldn't allow in the jail.
What kind of medication does he take?
Marinol.
What is that for?
I don't. All I know is it's THC in a pill. I don't know what it's for.
What kind of ailment does he have?
None that I'm
Do you
aware
know?
of.
Yes.
What?
He has a cancerous esophagus. He has a heart condition, and he has epileptic seizures. So
Okay.
he's on...
You didn't tell me he was convicted of assaulting his former wife.
I need to clear something up.
Uh-huh.
Number one, the lease was in my name. I rented the building because it gave them an opportunity to have their own place.
I'm not interested in that. My
Okay.
question, Ms. Neville, is I asked you when the trouble began, and What you said was it started over this bus incident, which would have sounded really petty to me.
Yeah.
For her to file a complaint if she had a problem with you. You would all live together, pick up the phone and say, Debbie, I don't want you dropping Jeffrey off on the bus. But that didn't happen.
Correct.
So the problem started before. And common sense would indicate to me you would have not been happy with your son's arrest for assault and spending any time in jail. And that probably precipitated the bad feeling between the two of you, which predated the school bus incident.
No, it didn't. She misled you on that fact.
No,
So what you're saying is the assault occurred before the school bus incident.
Oh, yes, this was before we were divorced. The first incident was before we were divorced. The second incident was in February of 2003.
And when was the school bus incident?
January 30th, 2003.
What was the second assault about?
He came into where I worked, All About Kids, to do a visitation with my son. He came to pick up Jeffrey, and he slammed me into the door jamb of a wall and tore my rotator cuff, took off with Jeffrey. The police came. They went and found Josh and Jeffrey.
What was the altercation about?
A coat. A coat.
Now I understand that you don't like each other. Don't like each other, I don't get involved in. You claim lost wages and punitive damages for defamation of character.
Correct.
You have 1 minute.
She called my boss. I have documentation when she called, and they logged it over to my boss. There's no mention that she's my daughter-in-law, that that's my grandson, or my sons that I'm picking up. It says that unknown people and her son. He was on a visitation with him, and his father gave permission for him to ride the bus. So I have permission to give him a ride on my bus when
No, you don't. No, you don't. Because if there is a court order of visitation, the court order of visitation provides that the child is to be picked up and returned at a specific location.
Correct.
Not by you.
Not by me.
But by his father.
And his father was on my bus. Let me explain, okay?
No. I want you to tell me what the lawsuit is about.
Okay. I'm sorry. So, I go back, I talk to my boss. My boss says, get an anti-harassment order because we don't want to deal with this problem. I did. I went before a judge.
All you had to do was stop taking your grandson off the road that you were supposed to be traveling with other children and not drop him off at the daycare.
Well, I hadn't had an opportunity not do that.
But Miss Neville.
I did what
Miss
the officer
Neville
told me.
No.
The judge.
That's, first of all, that's hearsay.
Excuse me.
Listen to me.
Explain this. You're twisting this.
I'm not twisting anything.
You are.
Now listen to me.
She's saying there was a DV assault, but they had got reconciled. They got together. They moved out. They left. She got caught cheating, having an affair with a high school kid.
Listen to me carefully. All you had to do.
Well, she doesn't mention that to you.
Just
I mean,
a second.
come on.
I'm talking about you and your lawsuit,
Okay.
which I'm going to lose my temper over in a couple of seconds.
Well, I've had to deal with it for 5 years. How do you?
You don't get 5 years worth, madam. What you're going to tell me is about lost wages.
Correct.
And punitive damages for defamation of character and slander. Get there.
What it had to do with is the whole school year of 2000 and 2004, she continued to make attacks on my person by making claims that my grandson scared of me. She wrote the school this. She tried to get me removed from my school route by writing the school district.
Show me.
This is the statement, one letter that she wrote.
Okay, so after you stopped bringing him to the daycare, and there was no problem with that, she wrote this to the school.
Correct.
And you claim that this is harassment. I want to know what this is a legal claim.
Yeah, she claimed she didn't want Jeffrey to speak to me or be near me, that he was scared of me.
Okay. She contacted the school, to whom it may concern. You sent this to the elementary school? And it merely says that she does not want, for whatever reason, which she outlines here, she doesn't want Debbie Neville to contact him while he's at school.
Your Honor, the reason why is because there was an incident with Debbie and my son Jeffrey at the school. I have a letter from his principal in regards to that, as well as a letter from my son's therapist that he's been seeing since kindergarten regarding the incident.
The therapist in September of 2003, and I don't want to go back there, says it's best for him not to have contact with you. Okay. Get to 2005.
Okay.
I want to hear how you have a lawsuit against Miss Hubel for lost wages and defamation of character.
Okay.
This is not a therapy session,
I know.
Miss Neville.
I know.
This is a lawsuit. So get there.
So several times during I had that anti-harassment order, I had to call the police and report incidences with her, and I have copies of a few of those.
Not interested.
And so the following...
I'm not interested. I'm interested in defamation
Okay.
and lost wages. And if you can't get there, I'm going to dismiss your case.
I had to select a different route the following year to prevent her from further tormenting me.
Okay, good. That's not a lawsuit. What else?
I lost wages because of that, because I didn't take that route because she kept calling the school district.
That's the way things go.
Here's a letter from his bus driver.
I'm not interested in a letter from his bus driver. I don't see a lawsuit,
If
Miss
you don't
Neville.
let me enter my evidence, how am I supposed to prevent a case?
I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me.
You just read documents that were not notarized, that I don't...
They're from school officials and a therapist.
The school official got fired because of what she did. Wrote that letter. She was not allowed to write that
Listen
letter.
to me. I'm not interested
Correct.
in anything that happened in 2003. This is not a therapy session. It's a court.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You're going to have to move. Otherwise, there's going to be constant
It's not all
aggravation.
that easy just to pick up and move.
It's not all that easy. Have the last 4 years been easy?
No.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Debbie Neville claims ex-daughter-in-law Sarah Hubel has slandered her at her job. Sarah is countersuing for harassment.
I'm going to hear your counterclaim. 30 seconds. Get there.
Yes, ma'am. Well, as of this year, a couple weeks ago, she just had taken me to court again, trying to get an anti-harassment order for me. It was denied. This was the second order that she had tried to get against me that was denied. I'm continually having to go into court because of her allegations.
Where do you live?
I live in Seattle.
Which she
And
moved
where's
right
your
next door to me. Why she had the restraining order, she moved right up the street from me, right on top of my bus route, just so she could watch me come and go.
Where does your former husband live?
He also lives in Seattle.
How far away from you?
Well, actually, they just moved. Maybe about a mile from where I live.
Seattle's a big place. Why don't you move farther away from them?
I don't move farther away from them because my son goes to school there. He has gone to school there since kindergarten. I work right across the street from my son's school. I live right down the road.
Who else
That's
lives
where
with
it's
you
always
now, Miss
been.
Hubel?
Christopher Crippen,
Who is he?
my boyfriend.
Does he work?
Yes.
How long was the custody battle that you had with your former husband?
2.5 years.
Did he want custody?
No.
So he wanted visitation.
Just visitation.
Does he have visitation now?
Not any longer.
When was that terminated?
In March of 2003, right after the assault, I went to the court to get a protection order for my son to ask for supervised visitation. And Josh denied in open court that he wanted to have any visitation with Jeffrey if it had to be
Supervised.
supervised.
So are you telling me that he hasn't seen his son since March of 2003?
Correct.
Is he living with you?
He is.
Very sad family case.
Yes, it is.
But one thing you seem to be both accomplishing is you're both accomplishing making this little boy crazy.
Excuse me.
You got to get over it, both of you.
I've never even...
You don't have a lawsuit. This case is this is not a lawsuit. This is
Excuse me.
aggravation.
It is aggravation.
It is aggravation.
It is.
You're causing each other aggravation. You have to stop.
Correct. But she won't stop.
I have the feeling, Miss Neville, and I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that if you had nothing to do with her, nothing to do with her,
You know
your
what?
problems would be over. I can understand why you're angry. I can understand.
Excuse me.
can understand why you're angry. You have a son who's ill, who, according to you, has cancer, takes medication.
No, it's not according
who's
to me.
been
I
in
have
jail.
the doctor's
I'm
reports right
speaking.
here.
You're not
But
following.
you're making statements.
You are over here.
But
You're not getting it.
It's not according to me. Here's some documents.
I agree with you. I accept the fact that he's ill.
And I don't call her job. I don't follow her around. I don't do that.
I have a feeling, Miss Neville, that Miss Hubel would like...
My witness can testify to her following me into the store, staying outside, waiting for me to come out of the store, and chasing me out of the parking lot. I've had her push a grocery cart into my leg.
You shouldn't have anything to do with each other. You shouldn't be near each other.
Honor, I thought it was supposed to be my turn to be giving my statements.
What I'm trying to do is to tell you, neither one of you has a lawsuit. You have created aggravation for each other.
What have I done to her? Excuse me, tell me. Do you have documentations of what have I called your job? Have I gone to your place of work? I avoid your place of work. My friends avoid you. The whole community avoids you because they're scared of you. They're scared if you get done tired being mad at me that they're going to stalk them. I have witnesses would not come because they're scared of her.
Well,
I lost business in my art because of her.
One way or another, if you want to live in peace, you're going to have to relocate.
Yes.
That's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to move out of Seattle. And if you don't do it, then you're just prolonging this bad feeling because she has a grown son who has an illness. That makes her feel bad as a mother. She has a grown son who probably says to her that he's sad because he can't see his son. That makes her feel protective. Do you understand? There's a story which is the underpinning of this lawsuit. You're going to have to move. And the faster you do it, the faster you're going to be able to enjoy your life. Do you get it?
Yes.
Otherwise, there's going to be constant
It's not all
aggravation.
that easy just to pick up and move.
It's not all that easy. Have the last 4 years been easy?
No.
Your son's 9 years old. It's not as if he's a junior in high school that he has to reacquaint with friends when he's a junior and he's going to graduate. He's 9 years old. He'll adjust to a new school. You want peace? Move. Lawsuit's dismissed. Thank you. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out, ma'am. Wait here. Now, this is case number 137 on the calendar in the matter of Bassey versus Hood. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Have a seat.
Who was driving? You weren't there?
No.
You're her mom?
Yes, I'm her mother.
She looks like she can take care of herself. If she can't, you can't help her because you weren't there.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Bassey, according to your complaint, you and the defendant got into sort of an altercation. You were going to pick up
my little sister.
Your sister in school, and you were going to pick up
My son.
Your son. And as a result of that, it is your claim that the defendant damaged your car. The defendant says that your poor driving was the result of the damage to your car, and you actually ran into her car. That's your defense.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Pull that a little bit closer to me so that I can see it a little bit better up here, Bird. Miss Bassey, you're the red car.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Go over and put your finger over there, please. That's where you were coming from, and you were making a left turn into the parking lot?
Yes, ma'am.
And the defendant was coming straight.
She was coming straight, and she didn't have a signal on. She was like right here where the curb is, where the driveway ends, and then she decides all of a sudden I need to turn. And so when she turns, she comes.
Shh, don't speak.
She comes and she turns so close to the curb, and I'm about to turn thinking she's about to pass by, so I stop to prevent from hitting her because it's a very congested area. And she turns in, and then I turn in after her.
Well, so far you understand she had the right of way.
Yes, ma'am.
You did not. So, okay, and what happened next?
I honked at her.
Why?
Well, because she didn't. I honked at her because she didn't use her signal.
Well, that's not a nice thing to do, Miss Bassey. That's not an appropriate thing to do. She had the right of way. So right there, you were wrong. You had no right to honk at her because she had the right of way. Whether you think she had a signal on or not, she says she did. It doesn't make any difference. In a congested road, and you're going across 2 lanes of traffic coming from the opposite direction, and she is on the side of the road where she could make a right turn into that spot, she's got the right of way. So, that's one for her team. You had no right to honk the horn. So what happened after you honked the horn?
We pull up into the driveway area. We're right here where you pick up all the kids. And I honked twice to get my little sister's attention. When I honked twice, she thought I was honking at her.
Again?
Yes, she thought I was honking at her again.
Well, now let me ask you this question. How many kids are outside?
A lot.
What do you think it would be like, Miss Bassey, if everybody honked their horn a couple of times to get their little sister's attention?
Well, yeah, I mean,
is there something wrong with your legs?
Well, no, she wasn't that.
Just listen. Was there something wrong with your legs?
There was nothing wrong with my legs.
Then if there's nothing wrong with your legs, you stop the car and you get out of the car and you say to your little sister, here I am. You don't sit in your car and honk the horn. We're going to go step by step. I haven't gotten to her yet because I have a feeling you didn't behave reasonably either because I read your answer.
No, ma'am.
And it's amazing to me that two women, you know, usually it's the guys that get into these jock wars, but two women behaving badly? How old are you?
17.
Well, you better go back to driving school and etiquette school because so far you're not #1 on my hit parade today. So you honked your horn for your sister and the defendant thought you were again honking at her. That's what you assumed. So what did she do?
She flips me off and starts waving her fist behind me. She turns around and she just starts doing the little hand things and yelling.
Not a nice thing. Just a second. Not a nice thing to do.
You're right.
Okay. So she gestures to you in an obscene gesture. What happens next?
I looked at her and I threw my hands up like trying to say, no, I was not honking at you. And, you know, she's still yelling, and I was yelling back at her. I'm like, look, I'm not trying to
So now
honk
you're
at you.
yelling at each other?
Yes.
Good. Go ahead.
And then after that, my little sister does see me, and she comes to the side of the car. And the defendant is still very angry that I had honked at her. And, you know, we were still arguing with each other. And so at this time, I was trying to move. I had my little sister in the car. I wanted to get out of there. It's very busy. She doesn't move.
Well, where's your car?
Right here.
So you're behind her?
Mm-hmm. So she pulls up a little bit, we pull up, and then, you know, she's still mad. And I honked at her again. I'm like, can you please move?
All right. So why are you honking?
She wouldn't move.
Why does she have to move?
She could have moved, but
Why,
she was...
now, why does she have to move?
Well, her son had already gotten to the car.
Look, I'm looking at your car, and I'm seeing what you did. So you pulled out, according to you, you pulled out because she's not moving, and you pulled around her.
Yes, after she did it, but no, I got out the car. I even got out the car and said, will you please move? Is she still cussing me out?
Can I ask you a question? Why? Miss Bassey, what? Stop it!
Yes, ma'am.
Why are you still arguing with her and imploring her to move when all you had to do was drive around her?
At the time, there was still cars going. There's a lot of cars still going through. And then when she was free, she wouldn't move. I was behind her to a place where I couldn't really squeeze around her this way or squeeze around her this way, but I managed.
Because everybody's picking up their children.
Yes.
Keep going.
Then I did manage to, because my car is small enough, so I'm like, okay, maybe I can squeeze around her. I was able to squeeze around her, and I drove all the way to over here to the drive area. Then she comes all the way, she drives over here, rolls down her window and said, is this the way black people act? And I'm like, what was that supposed? I looked at her kids in the car, and they appeared to be biracial to me. And then I looked at her again, I'm like, what was that supposed to mean?
Okay.
And at this time, yes, I mean, we were cussing each other out. She then says, do you want to fight? And I'm like, do I want to what? And my little sister gets out of the car.
What'd she get out of the car for?
She got out she's like, do you want to fight? And my little sister's like, what do you want to, she's like, what do you want to fight for?
Where's the little sister? Step up here. Move over there. What did you get out of the car for?
Because at that time, Mrs. Hood had opened her door like she was going to get out, so I'm like...
Sounds like a perfect reason for you to stay in your car. If somebody, according to you and according to your sister, is acting like a lunatic and says, do you want to fight? Doesn't sound like the kind of situation you want to say, sure. Now, what's your first name?
LaQuise.
LaQuise, genius. What did you do when you got out of the car?
Well, I got out of the car because, you know, by that time I was really mad. And so I guess I wasn't thinking. I got out the car and then, you know, I kind of went over to her car and then...
So you kind of went over to her
yeah,
car. What does that mean? That means you went over to her car?
I walked over to her car.
What?
I walked over to her car.
And what did you say when you walked over to her car?
I really didn't say anything. I was waiting on her. She said she was going to get out and fight. And I'm like,
and that's what you were waiting to do. You got out of the car to fight her.
I mean, I was going to see if she was
Miss Bassey back there, you should be very proud of them so far. Are you following me?
I am.
Right? So far, I'm looking at your mother and I'm looking at you two, and I got news for you. I don't think that your mother would have reacted the same way that day that you did. Right, Miss Bassie?
Yes.
Thank you.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
When people behave badly and they have no defense for their bad behavior, they infuse racism to try to inflame the fact finder. Listen to me. It doesn't work.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. 17-year-old Brycey Bassie says during an argument at a junior high school, fellow motorist Tatum Hood rammed her car. Tatum claims Brycey and her sister threatened her life.
Okay, so after you got out of the car and walked over to Miss Hood's car because she said she wanted to fight, I assume at some point you got back into the car.
I walked over back to my sister's car, but because, you know, she was about to turn right by then. But then Mrs. Hood hits my sister's car, and I was shocked. I had no time to get back in the car because that's when she turned.
Well, just a minute. Your sister is making a turn from the wrong lane.
No. This is to go right. I went left after she had to hit my car. I was not even moving when she hit my car. She hit my car on purpose.
You mean she plowed into your car, you were standing still?
Yes, my car was not in motion.
Okay. And you have photographs of this car?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to see it. Oh, that's a lot of damage. All right, Miss Hood, ball's in your court.
It was January 19th, 2005. May I go over here? I went to the school to pick up my son that's here. I'm the blue car here. I'm coming down Tyler Road. I believe it would be south. She's coming north. She is right here. As she said, it's very congested. There's lots of cars. If she would have been, like on her chart, over here already turning, there was tons of cars coming. I did have my blinker on.
Listen to me. She was wrong. I already said
Okay.
she was wrong.
Okay. So we turn in. When we turn in at Wilbur, there's also, there's like two lanes like this. I stay in this lane. We never got over here because to get over here, you have to stop up against the school, and there's buses and handicap parking. I stayed in this lane. As I was turning, she started calling me all out of my name. She called me a white bee. Go back to driver's ed, learn how to drive. I'm going to kick your butt. As we stopped, I stopped here. She was behind me. She honked. I thought she was honking at me. Stupidly, I flipped her off. I never shook my fist at her, nothing else. She got out of her car at that point in time, come up, beating on my window, was screaming, I'm going to kick your butt. But she was not saying butt. Get out of your truck, you white bee this, white bee that. I rolled down my window. I said, you need to go get back in your car before you embarrass yourself. She went back into her car. We both proceeded to go. She spun around me. She's still screaming. I'm saying some stuff. We get like we're right here, and she is calling me all out of my name, still profanity, racial slurs. I am married to a black man. I am not racist. I rolled down my window. I said, you are giving young black women a bad name. You should not act like that. I would never allow my daughter to act like that, or my son. She's like still using profanity, still cussing, and she's like, pull over her. By this time, the other sister was screaming at me too. Pull over, we're going to whip your butt, blah, blah, blah. She starts to go. I take off. Bam, I hit her. She's barely like this. They're going to pull over. They're trying to cut me off to fight. She never got out of the car. I hit her. When I hit her, we stopped. I probably stopped for 30 seconds. I'm not going to lie. Both of them at that time got out of the car. She was never out of the car till after I hit her. And then they were screaming, we're going to kill you, you stupid white bee, blah, 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 calling me racial. I can't believe it has turned into a racial thing. It's so sickening. And then...
No, it's not.
It's
not. Listen to me. Listen to me, Miss Hood. It's not racial here. It's not racial in this courtroom.
You're right.
Sometimes when people behave badly and they have no defense for their bad behavior, they infuse racism to try to inflame the fact finder. Listen to me. It doesn't work. Go ahead.
Afterwards, I leave because I don't know what they're going to do. Brycey then jumps back in the car with the younger sister that she picked up who's in the back seat, chasing us. I'm stopping at stop signs, stopping at stoplights. Each time we stop, she's getting out of the car, trying to come up to the window, still screaming. When we see 2 cop cars coming, I pull into a parking lot. She pulls in. When she pulls in, she stops. She gets out of her car. I'm going to mollywop you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to beat you up.
May I please see the police report?
Yes, ma'am.
And then
I want to see the police report.
the cops that pull up are telling her to get back in her car. They restrain her. I'm sorry.
I want to read the police report. You told the police you got out of the car.
My sister got out of the car.
Brycey, you signed the statement. You said, before that, I got out of the car and asked what the problem. And one continued to yell at me.
When I got out the car, that's way before whenever we were still in the school area.
You didn't tell me that you got out of the car.
I did. I said I got out of the car and asked her to move.
No, you told the police you got out of the car and asked her what her problem was.
Yeah, I asked her what the problem is. Can you please move? I was not honking at you.
Did you do the wrong thing that day?
Yes, I did.
How much of this accident was your fault?
I would probably say, I don't know. I'm not going to say that it was the least of my fault. No, it was not. I shouldn't have honked at her. You know, that's the one thing. I shouldn't have honked at her. And then when I honked twice, I probably should have yelled for my sister. Or, you know, then after I got out the car, you know, instead I should have probably just sat there and waited for her to move.
Yes, you want to say something?
For what it's worth, I just want to say that I did speak with Mrs. Hood regarding this accident 2 days later. I went over to Mrs. Hood's home because I got the police report. I didn't have insurance. I was going to file the insurance, and I needed to know where she lived. The police did give us her address. And I went. She was very polite. I didn't have a problem with her. Mrs. Hood told me she was having a bad day that day. She said she was in an argument with her husband's nieces, and, you know, she was upset, and she was already tensed up and upset. And she did tell me she intentionally hit my daughter's car. She never denied hitting her car, but she also proceeded...
Just a second. Are you telling me, Miss Bassey, that Miss Hood said I intentionally hit her car?
Yes, she did. Those were her exact words to me. Yes.
Interesting. Is that what you said to her?
I said I hit her daughter's car. I never intentionally hit it. She was coming this way to cut me off. I did hit Brycey's car. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say I did hit it.
No, I know you did. I have the pictures to prove that you did. I'm just surprised that Miss Bassey is telling me that you used the word intentionally. I mean, I can't imagine anybody intentionally hitting somebody else's car.
Oh, that's what she told my daughter and myself. And she also told me she left the scene of the accident. I don't agree with Brycey chasing her. She said she left the scene of the accident not because she was afraid of my daughter.
Not just chasing her, Miss Bassey.
She left because she said she was unlawfully driving her truck.
Listen to me. I got it. I don't believe this story. I believe that what your daughter did was pull out, speed around her, and I believe that when she pulled out and sped around her, Miss Hood caught up with her.
No, I don't believe that, Your Honor.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Because Brycey wasn't moving when she hit her.
No. Listen to me. I said Miss Hood caught up with her. She pulled around her fast in a school pickup zone. That's what your daughter did. She had an attention span and a fuse that was about this short. And she created a situation in there because she's got a hot temper, and she wasn't behaving like a mature driver. Neither was this one. But she's not the plaintiff. She is. So you had, according to your complaint, $4,000 worth of damage to your car with no insurance.
No.
And all I'm asking...
She had insurance.
Insurance.
Yes, we had insurance.
Oh, good. So how much did the insurance pay?
We didn't want to file the insurance.
No.
Well, you better.
Insurance does not take care of damages that have intentionally been done to the car.
Said.
Well, listen to me very carefully. I would file with my insurance carrier if I were you. Ordinarily, if this was solely her fault, I would say, well, why should you file with your insurance? Because that means your premiums are going to go up.
Yes, which they would have.
You're absolutely right. They would have, because she's a 17-year-old driver who was involved in an accident. But this accident was partially her fault. So I think you ought to file with your insurance company. Now, what kind of deductible do you have?
$500.
Good. Miss Hood's going to pay that. But you file with your insurance company. This accident was partially your fault, and that's what you have insurance for.
Even though Mrs. Hood agreed to fix her car? She agreed to fix it.
Listen to me. Then you don't come to court, Miss Bassey. Then you don't come to court. But if you come here and you're asking a fact finder to make a determination of what the right thing to do is, in this case, the right thing to do is because your daughter was at least 50% responsible for what went on that day, because she did the wrong thing. She may have caught her on a bad day. That's the way sometimes you catch people. What? She was not in a hurry to go to a summit meeting. So she waits her turn, and she takes an extra couple of minutes, and her sister doesn't get out of the car in an aggressive stance. She's not picking up her baby sister who's 3 years old. Your other daughter looks like she can well take care of herself, and she's got an attitude. So that's what you have insurance for. Miss Hood has to accept some responsibility for what she did, and she's going to cover your deductible. Put it into your insurance. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $500. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step. Yes, case number 15 on the calendar in the matter of Miller versus Welch. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Have a seat, ma'am.
Mr. Miller, it is your claim that the defendant, who was living in your home, along with her mother and her child, filed false charges against you for domestic violence. You want to be compensated with the return of your bail and some additional amount of money to compensate you for what you went through. The defendant says that she filed for a protective order because the ultimate reason was you called her 3-year-old some bad names, right?
Yes.
How did she come to be in your house?
Ma'am, Jessica Welch and I had a relationship. Our relationship started the ending of September, beginning of October. She moved in, ma'am.
Why did she move in?
We had a relationship. I was physically attracted to her. We talked a lot, had a lot of things in common, ma'am. My wife moved out.
When did your wife move out?
About the end of September.
Okay, so your wife moved out in September. You began a relationship with the defendant, and when did she move in?
Beginning of October, ma'am.
Don't like to be alone?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Miller?
No, ma'am.
Are you living alone now?
No, ma'am. I'm back with my wife, and we're working things through.
Good. You still didn't tell me why she moved in.
She was living with her stepfather, ma'am, and I guess her stepfather was doing a lot of yelling. It was a bad environment for her son, CJ.
So that's why you allowed her to move into your house, plus the fact that you liked her.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that right so far, Miss Welch?
Yes.
You had been living previously with your mother?
My mother and stepfather, yes.
And they weren't getting along?
No.
Do you work?
Yes, I do.
Did you work then?
Yes.
What kind of work did you do?
I'm a clerk at a convenience store.
Full-time, part-time?
Full-time.
And your mother?
She works for a big satellite company.
Tell me about why you filed for a protective order against him.
There was an argument that Chris and I had.
When?
Right before Thanksgiving. It's the end of November.
Okay.
He had been drinking. He had argued with his wife on the telephone. He was promising to take her out for their anniversary. And being as they were separated, I didn't agree with that. We got into an argument about it. As I turned to walk away, he came after me. He ran after me and grabbed me and knocked me down to the floor.
Shh. Mr. Miller, I know you want to respond. You're going to have an opportunity to do that. Came from behind you.
He grabbed me from behind and knocked me down to the floor. I ended up went into the bathroom to cry because...
Well, what happened after he knocked you down to the floor?
After he knocked me down to the floor, he went back into the kitchen because my mother got into the middle of it. My mother watched and she separated us.
Were you arguing with each other?
Yes, we were.
Were you physical with him?
No, I wasn't. I turned and walked away from him.
Did you say anything to him?
No, I was like, I'm done. I just turned and walked away.
Okay. That was in November?
Yes. And then later that evening, we went to bed. I was putting blankets and pillows in between us so that we didn't touch while we were sleeping. And he leaned over and bit me on the left breast.
And where did you sleep that night?
I ended up sleeping on the floor that night.
And the night after?
The night after was back in the bed with him.
Well, what happened the next day?
The next day, he said he didn't remember. He had been drinking a lot. I tried to tell him what happened. He just blew me off and ignored me. He just did not remember.
Well, that's November. Did you stay together in December?
No. Monday after the incident occurred, I got a restraining order. And
you got a restraining order when?
I got a restraining order the end of November.
I'd like to see it, please. Now, one of my questions to you is, you moved into his home.
Yes.
You, in effect, had him kicked out of his own house. Why didn't you and your mother and your kid leave?
At that time, we didn't have any money because we paid off the rest of his deposit when he invited us to move in, and he added our names to the lease.
Mr. Miller, You
Yes, ma'am.
added her name to the lease?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
That was very stupid.
Yes, it was, ma'am.
What was that Forrest Gump line, Bird? Stupid is as stupid does?
That's the one.
Right. Okay. Now, he wasn't arrested on this domestic violence charge. He was arrested for outstanding warrants that he had when you filed the complaint. What kind of warrants did you have, Mr. Miller?
Misdemeanor, ma'am. They were being intoxicated in public and in public.
You didn't learn not to drink, Mr. Miller?
Yes, ma'am. I go to classes now. Yes.
Should have gone to classes back in November.
I was doing that, actually.
Not successfully?
No, ma'am.
Okay. This case was ultimately dismissed.
The
Yes, ma'am.
assault case was, yes.
How come, Miss Welch?
But because pretty much he got my boss, my ex-boss, and old co-worker to lie for him.
You mean this case was tried?
Wasn't tried after the prosecuting attorney talked to the witnesses he had. She didn't feel that it was necessary to move forward because if we went to jury, we wouldn't have got anywhere because it was an attack on my character.
But this is the case on which you base your complaint. Is that right, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Because she had you arrested not at the time of this incident before Thanksgiving, but she waited. Isn't that right, Miss Welch? Because when you called the police because he said bad things to your son. You had not gone to the police with regard to this incident where he pushed you and bit you, according to you. You did not go to the police until, according to you, he said some things to your son that you didn't like, and then you decided to go to the police and report the domestic violence. Isn't that what I read?
That's pretty much what you read, because if he's calling my son names...
Exactly. I just answered my question, my dear. It wasn't until after he called your son a name that you went to the police and complained about this incident that had happened days before. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now tell me about the incident involving your son.
We were sitting there. He'd been drinking the whole day again. My son was playing, and he called him stupid, called him retarded. And I know if he's calling my son names, he's going to hit my son next. He hit me. It ain't going to happen. Nobody's going to touch my son.
Well, he didn't touch him, did he?
No, he didn't. But if he has the audacity to call my son stupid and retarded, this is also the same man that has the audacity to assault a woman. He has the audacity to assault a child, too.
Why didn't you move?
I had nowhere to go. I don't have family in Idaho.
Well, listen to me. You know this man for a couple of months. This man isn't your life. You're there with your mother. Go to a shelter. I mean, why are you staying there? This isn't your husband. You don't have a child together. You don't have a life together. He had a house. You needed a place to stay. Mr. Miller says that you moved a friend into the house. Is that true?
No, I did not.
Did you have a friend come to stay with you for a period of time, Miss Welch?
I had...
Just look at me. Don't look at him. Look at me.
I had a friend stay for a couple of weeks.
And the friend's name?
His name is Tony.
Tony what? And how long do you know Tony?
I'd known him before Chris. I'd known him for about 5 months.
Where did you know him from?
From the same place I met Chris, work.
And why did you invite him to stay at a house?
He had just gotten out of jail. He came. He came and he needed a place to stay, so I let him stay.
Was Mr. Miller in agreement with that?
He said that first night that Tony stayed that yes, he was in agreement with it.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Ma'am, she moved Tony in. I was not aware it was her ex-boyfriend.
Look at me. Don't look at her.
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry. Apologize. Ma'am, it was her ex-boyfriend. He came on the 12th, on Friday, when this assault supposedly was supposed to happen, ma'am. On the 14th, I came to her and asked, why is he still there? She told me he got a job, he will be moving out. On the 14th, it's when the cops came to arrest me, ma'am. When I was arrested, she got a restraining order. As soon as I left the jail, I bailed out, ma'am. I was no longer welcome back in my home.
Where was Tony?
Living there, man, in my bedroom. And I do have a letter saying that...
Don't tell me a letter. I don't do letter.
Okay, ma'am. It's a letter from her to Tony. I'm sorry.
Oh, a letter from her?
To Tony.
That I'll see. Show this to the defendant, would you? What date did you write that?
It was February of this year.
Where were you living?
I was living in the house where I'm still currently residing, where Mr. Miller moved out of.
So you're still there?
Yes.
Can I have that note back, please? How come you're still there?
My mom and I are trying to save up enough money to find a new place to live. It's kind of hard. We're having a little trouble getting the money up.
So
to
Tony's
find a
sort of
place.
helping you?
No, Tony's no longer around.
When did he leave?
Tony left, it had to be March this year. He wasn't living in the house. He had his own place, and I was going to move in with him, but I found out he's been hanging out with Mr. Miller, so I decided that was not the best.
You have a 3-year-old child?
Yes.
Why don't you grow up? Why don't you grow up?
I'm working on that.
You're not working hard enough. You keep picking losers, that's your business. If Mr. Miller is honest with himself, and right now he is probably clean and sober, he knows that he's not a winner. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Miller?
Yes, that is a very fair statement, ma'am.
And clearly Tony, who just got released from prison and needed a place to stay, is also not a winner. And you and your mother, who didn't have a place to stay, 2 adult women with jobs, who couldn't find a safe place to stay for their 3-year-old son and grandson, clearly are not winners. You better grow up.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And later today,
After 72 hours, it's not toxic.
Well, did your bird die within 72 hours?
It died immediately of him standing with the process.
Well, then what I'm telling you, madam, is you should have taken your animals out of the house.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Christopher Miller says ex-girlfriend Jessica Welch took out a false restraining order against him. Jessica claims Christopher physically abused her and verbally abused her young son.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, ma'am.
You probably don't remember what happened the night in November when things got a little tacky with Miss Welch. There isn't a question in my mind that she used you. There is also not a question in my mind that the reason you called the police, Miss Welch, is that you wanted him out of the house so that Tony could be there unencumbered. Not that he called your son stupid, but that he had already told you. Tony was going. And Tony didn't go. Tony stayed, according to you, for 2 weeks after he was out of the house. At least 2 weeks. So I think you had an ulterior motive for calling the police on him and having him arrested and having him removed from his house. Mr. Miller, I think that your conduct in getting sloshed and not acting appropriately didn't help things. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
But I don't think that Miss Welch filed for a protective order because she was legitimately afraid of you, which is the only reason that you filed for a protective order. Not for another reason, not because you want an apartment, you want a house, you want him out so that you could bring another boyfriend. And those aren't legitimate reasons for filing for a protective order, because you've sworn in your application for a protective order that you are in fear. And you weren't in fear. You were only in fear if the 2 men stayed in the house with you at the same time. So, Mr. Miller, I think that you behaved probably a little bit badly, but certainly that was not the reason that you called the police. Judgment for the plaintiff for the amount of bail, $1,000. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Her boss, her co-worker, and her ex-boyfriend was on my side, too.
He wins again.
Even the good guys win at times.
I have a good heart and I'm a good person.
Judge Judy's the bomb.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Lubbock versus Nunez, step forward, please.
Real estate agent Donna Levick is suing business owner Jack Nunez for the cost to replace 3 parrots. Donna says the birds died after Jack sanded her floors.
Miss Lovick, how old are you?
35.
What do you do for a living?
I sell real estate.
How long have you been a real estate agent?
Almost 4 years.
Do you have any college degrees behind you?
No degrees, but I have 2 years of junior college.
And your husband?
He's a deputy sheriff.
You have ongoing training?
Yes, ma'am.
And you, sir, what do you do for a living?
I'm a tile contractor.
How long have you been doing that?
Since '73.
Okay, now let's get to the case. Miss Lovick, you had 3 parrots. How long had you had them?
My oldest African gray I had for approximately 15, 16 years.
And what's their life expectancy?
40 to 60 years.
And the other 2?
My severe macaw I had for about 3.5 years, and also for my Timna.
And this is what the lawsuit is about. You hired Mr. Nunez to come in and sand your floors in your house. and seal them. And he did that.
Correct.
And your parrots died.
Correct.
So you want him to pay for your parrots, their vet bills, the casket, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
What did you do in preparation to your house to have your floor sanded?
We didn't do anything. We just took the birds outside.
When you sand floors, what comes up?
Generally dust, but he was using a wet sander, so you don't see dust particles flying all over.
So you're telling me there wasn't any dust in your house?
My birds, I had taken them outside.
I'm not asking you about your birds now. I'm just asking you generally.
Oh.
When you sand floors, there's usually
Dust.
dust. You don't have to be a college graduate to figure that out. 35-year-old real estate agent with 2 years of college could figure that out, that you have dust. And when you seal the floors after the sanding, they seal it with...
Chemicals.
And the chemicals usually...
Toxic.
Don't know toxic, but they usually smell.
Yes.
And they do have places where you can board animals while you're doing things in the house, just as if you were going away. Who are you?
I'm Donna's mother, and I was...
Do you
there.
live with them?
No, I don't.
You have your own house?
Yes, I do.
Could have taken your birds to your mother's house.
Yes.
You chose to keep your birds home. One, I understand from your complaint, died outside. Two of them, however, died in the house. That's your fault. That's not his fault. If you had a baby, do you have children?
I do, and she was also in the house.
Well,
we were
that is
outside.
something clearly wrong
We
with
were
you.
outside when this happened. We had gone outside, and they opened the windows. My birds were on the patio outside of what we thought was harm's way. He never told us that there'd be a toxic gas. You could not smell the dust. You couldn't see the dust in the air.
Why were you outside?
Because it was a nice day, and we were trying to stay out of their way.
Well, if that's the only reason that you were staying outside, I'm glad your child is well. You have to accept responsibility. This was your fault, not his fault, because if you're having somebody come in and whip up dust, whether they use a wet process or a dry process, it whips up dust. When you seal it, it stinks.
It was already sealed, and we went to the
Now,
manufacturers.
listen.
After 72 hours, it's not toxic.
Well, did your bird die within 72 hours?
They died immediately of him sanding the process.
Well, then what I'm telling you, madam, is you should have taken your animals out of the house. That's your responsibility. And if you didn't take them far enough away from the house, that's your responsibility. That's not
It's his
Mr.
responsibility
Nunez's
to tell me the
responsibility.
dangers
Miss
of-
Lovick, it's harder to accept responsibility for the death of your birds than it is to blame it on somebody else. Life starts with accepting responsibility. It's your fault.
I tried to expect responsibility of the death of my birds. I only asked for him to pay the vet bill. There's
Just a
no way.
second, if you accept responsibility...
He agreed to pay my vet bill.
I'm speaking. If you accept responsibility for the death of your birds, he doesn't pay anything.
He never once mentioned that there was a toxic chemical or gas that could be released from sanding our floors. The birds were outside. They opened the windows, and that's what exposed the birds to the fumes and the silica.
Miss Lovick, accept responsibility. It's your fault. Goodbye.
Parties are excused. You may step. Your Honor, this is case number 28 on the calendar in the matter of Hamilton versus Hamilton. You're welcome, Judge. Parties have been sworn in, Your Honor. You may be seated, sir. Have a seat, please.
Mrs. Hamilton, this is your stepson. Is this your husband?
Yes.
Oh, a little background. I gather from your complaint and your answer that you were divorced.
Yes, ma'am.
From his mother. You can step up yourself. And for most of his life, you'd had very little contact.
That's correct.
More recently, you contacted him, or you contacted your father. Which way?
I contacted him.
Your son contacted you, and you began to build a relationship. Now, Jason has had a troubled adolescence. Is that a fair statement, Jason?
Yeah.
And it is your claim, Mrs. Hamilton, that your funds were used to help Jason out when he got us into some trouble with the law.
Yes.
For an attorney, for restitution payments, and at that time he was in fact living with you. He comes to live with you. Jason says that the lawyer was your idea. He was perfectly happy with the public defender, and that the restitution he has paid for by working it off while he was living with you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with you, Jason. How old are you?
22.
What were you in trouble for, Jason?
Aggravated harassment and stalking in the fourth from my ex-girlfriend.
Okay, so let me hear about the first loan that you claim for his lawyer.
When we bailed Jason out on September 18th of last year, Jason was not happy with his public defender at all. He verbalized this to both my husband and myself.
What did he say?
He said he didn't feel that he was going to fight for him. He was going to, he just wanted, he felt that the public defender just wanted him to plea out to anything and get the case over and done with as quickly as possible. And Jason did not want to do that. He wanted to fight it. He didn't want to be charged, and he didn't want to violate his parole from his previous court case and actions on that.
What were you on parole for, Jason?
Arson.
What burned down, Jason?
Garage.
Go ahead.
On his first court date after he was bailed out, we went and got him an attorney.
Who's we?
My husband and I.
Go ahead.
After that, as far as with the restitution, initially he had to live with us as part of us bailing him out. And when we decided we were moving out of the area, he was given the option to move with us or stay in the area, and we would figure something out and work it out. He decided that he did want to move with us. So my husband and I paid that restitution from his previous case in order to free it up.
Case?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other part of the restitution was for the current case. After everything was settled, there was $100 restitution.
So he
for
pled
that.
guilty. You pled guilty in the current case involving your ex-girlfriend.
Right. I couldn't afford the lawyer anymore, so I had no choice. And I can't...
Were you, at that time that the matter was scheduled for trial, still living with your father and stepmother?
No.
Did you ever pay the lawyer any money?
No.
So it was just a $1,000 retainer that you paid the lawyer?
Correct.
Yes.
That was after Jason moved out, after
Correct.
you had the altercation in your house with him?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamilton, so far I haven't heard anything about a loan.
Before Jason was bailed out, on the phone conversations, he was informed that anything that was pertaining to this legal case was a loan and was to be paid back. That was one of the conditions of him being bailed out. Jason made comments about how he was not like his sister, who also we had a problem with before that. He was not like his sister, and he would pay us back that money. That was said numerous times, and at the end of Jason's stay in our house, because everything was a loan, I had him sign a promissory note.
Well, I know Jason says that note, you sort of forced him to sign the note because you said you were going to have his bail revoked if he didn't sign the note.
That was not how it was
well, I'm
worded.
going to turn over to you now, Jason.
When I was on the phone with them before I was bailed out, I was not told that it was a loan.
I'm sorry, that's wrong.
Shh.
I moved in with them. I did not know I was going to move in with them. I thought they were going to bail me out, take me home. But instead they brought me to their place, worked for them. My work would be to pay off whatever I did.
Well, what kind of work did you do, Jason?
I helped him, their construction business.
What did you do?
Labor. It was, unload the truck, load the truck, help my father, stuff like that. As far as me with my restitution, like I said, I never asked for the money. I never asked for any of it. I just simply said, when they went to pay it, I said, you don't have to do that. They said, oh, no, don't worry about it. I said,
No,
okay.
that's not what parents say, Jason. They don't use the word, oh, don't worry about it. They might have said, when you get yourself together, we hope you'll pay us back. Does that sound right? Huh?
Yes.
That sounds right. Life is so simple, Mrs. Hamilton. That's what parents say, even if they have an ongoing relationship with their children, if money is tight in a household. You don't say, well, this is a loan, and you will pay me back so much each month on this loan.
Your Honor, in the beginning, he did agree. Before I bailed him out, I told him, if I bail you out, you've got to pay this money back in a timely fashion, and you've got to get your act together, because the lifestyle he was living is totally, I'm afraid he's going to end up in jail for the rest of his life.
Where's your mother?
She's back in Buffalo.
Did you live with her all your life?
Yes.
Are you still in touch with her?
I live with her right now.
You have a sister?
Yes, I do.
How old's your sister?
19.
She in trouble?
No.
What kind of trouble?
Well, when we had her with us, she steals, she lies,
She's never been to jail, but she is a very emotionally troubled person, and she's been in and out of, she was in a group home at one point.
Jason, Tell me about the conversation you had with your father about the lawyer, about the public defender.
I was going to get a new PD to begin with because the guy that was representing me, he just didn't know what he was talking about. He had no clue.
What do you mean? Just a second. What do you mean you were going to get a new PD, public defender? You think that they give them out if you don't like one, you get a chance to get another one?
Well, that's what they were going to do. When I got rid of...
You live in a very good jurisdiction. If a criminal defendant came before me and said, I don't like that lawyer, I want to get another lawyer, you know what I would say to them? Go hire your own lawyer. You want to pick and choose? Go hire your own lawyer. This is the public defender for the day. You don't like this one? Get some money and go hire your own lawyer. You know, this is not one from column A and one from column B. You get one chance. Do you understand, Jason?
Yeah, I understand.
Good. Are you working now?
Yes, I am.
What kind of work are you doing?
I'm a barback at a banquet hall.
Hope this New York State Liquor Authority doesn't know about that. Is this arson conviction that you have a felony arson?
Yes.
Woohoo! Hope they don't value their liquor license. Listen to me, Jason. I want you to listen to me very carefully. I am not so concerned about the $1,000 that your stepmother and stepfather put up for the lawyer. I think they're going to have to tolerate that because I think that that's what parents do if they're afraid that their child is going to be confined. And I'm not so sure that that was a loan. But I'm concerned about the restitution, Jason, because what possible value is it to your moral compass if somebody else pays your restitution? Restitution is what you're supposed to pay, right?
I understand that. I was paying it.
How? I don't understand how you
I
were
was
paying.
working
With money I
beforehand.
gave him. Just a second.
Not just money you gave me. I was doing odd jobs here and there.
Well, you paid some of it, but they paid the
I
rest.
was paying on
Just
it.
a second. But they paid the rest. Well, paying the rest, it doesn't teach you any kind of a lesson. That's your responsibility. That's not your father's responsibility. That's not your stepmother's responsibility. That's your responsibility. The criminal justice system doesn't want to see. What do you do for a living?
I'm a real estate investor.
Doesn't want to see this lady who works. What do you do for a living?
I'm an investor also.
I don't know what that means, but life is too short.
Buy real estate.
They don't want to see their money going to pay your restitution. They didn't set fire to the garage and they didn't stalk your girlfriend.
I didn't either.
Well, then you lied to the court, sir, when you pled guilty.
I didn't know, what am I going to do if I ain't got money?
You know what innocent people do? They go to trial.
You have to...
Just a second, Jason. You're 22 years old. Is that what you
Yes.
told me before? How many times have you been arrested? Think. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. How many times have you been arrested?
13 times.
13. Shh. Come on. 13 times. 22 years old. And how many convictions do you have, Jason?
I have 4 convictions.
I have 5 children. How many kids you got?
4.
9 children altogether. Not one arrest.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And later today,
Miss Knapp, if someone tried to kill me with a car, I wouldn't get into bed with them for a deductible or anything else.
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Nicole Han Hamilton says her stepson, Jason Hamilton, owes for loans to retain an attorney and to pay restitution. Nicole says Jason has been arrested for arson and stalking.
You've been arrested 13 times. That cannot all be a mistake. The 4 times that you were convicted is not a mistake. The last 2 times that you pled guilty, I mean, you know the system, evidently. You're smart enough to know the system, that if you want a new PD, all you got to do is stamp your feet around, say, I'm not getting good representation. What you're supposed to do is not do things that get you into any trouble. Do you understand?
I know that.
Okay. And if you didn't learn the first time, and if you didn't learn the second time, the 10th time, you should have learned. By the time you got to the 12th time, it should have been bells go off in your head. Now you're at unlucky 13. Jason, you're 22 years old. You want to die?
No.
You don't care?
No, I care. I'm working now. I'm going for my GED. I have my life on track.
Good.
That's
Then
what
pay your restitution. The lawyer, It's yours.
That's fine. I
He's
just
gonna-
wanted him to learn a lesson.
He's
about
going to pay his
responsibility.
restitution. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $695. That's all.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I look at them as just white trash. What are they going to do? Sue their own son when he hits 18 for all the stuff that they paid for him?
As people can see, he is a punk. He'll always be a punk. I wash my hands with him. I got a beautiful 14-month-old son. I'm doing it right this time.
Smoking pot. I'm in probation. I don't want to get involved in no pot.
He's the one that smokes the pot, and I told him I didn't want it in my house.
I don't have a father. That's the way I look at it.
I'm here to guide you and show you the proper way. If you don't want to do that, I'm done.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Knapp versus Wheeler. Step forward.
Delivery truck driver Barbara Knapp is suing her ex-boyfriend, steelworker Claude Wheeler, for purposely driving her van into a ditch. Claude claims he swerved to miss a deer.
Ms. Knapp, it is your claim that Mr. Wheeler, who used to be your boyfriend, wrecked your car.
Correct.
And in addition to the damages to the car, you want some money for pain and suffering. I don't know what pain and suffering you want. You'll, I'm sure, explain it to me. Tell me about the day of the incident.
Okay, on December 28th, I do believe, we went grocery shopping, stopped at a bar and had a few drinks and was coming home and...
Okay, what time did you get to the bar?
8 o'clock.
8 p.m.?
8 p.m.
And how long did you stay at the bar?
Oh, possibly an hour maybe. No, not that long, because we had groceries in the car, so about an hour then, say.
Is that right, sir?
Correct.
Okay, you stopped at a bar, groceries in the car, went home, on your way back to the grocery.
On our way back home, and we were discussing just things, and an old boyfriend was brought up because he was apparently came into the bar, and I had made his comment that he's still love of my life, and he didn't like it, so I don't know what was said, but then he swatted me upside the head, in the back of the head, and then I had told him that that was it and it was over, and he proceeded to say, oh, I'll show you that. He drove my car down into the ditch. The next thing you know, a pole's coming, and we were headed straight for the pole, and he turned it just enough to go past the pole, but in the meantime, we kind of got wedged into the ditch and had to go out the windows to get out, and then I was just kind of in shock, I do believe, and
okay.
That was that.
Well, we were driving home that night. I had a few drinks, and we were arguing, and I was looking at her.
Try looking at me.
I don't recall slapping her upside the head or striking her. We were arguing, and I was looking at her, and when I turned my eyes back to the road, there were deer in the road, and I swerved to the right to miss the deer, and as soon as we got to the edge of the road, the snow sucked us into the ditch. I didn't do it intentionally.
Don't remember the deer?
There was no deer. He did it on
Okay.
purpose.
And you issued a report?
Mm-hmm.
You have a copy of that report?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to see it, please. You have any other police reports?
No, I went to the trooper's barracks to try to get the actual report from my statement and his statement, but apparently they do not let that out. They don't.
Your Honor, I have a signed statement of her from the night of the accident.
Can
right
I
here.
see it, please? That's what I'm looking for. Well, you did sign a statement on the 28th of December, Ms. Knapp.
Okay.
You didn't say anything about him purposely damaging your car. You say at about 2 or 3 o'clock, my boyfriend was at my house. He had a margarita, which was left over from last night. At about 7 o'clock, we went grocery shopping at Wegmans and then went to Jit's Bar for a couple of beers and pool. He had 2 or 3 beers there. Then we started home. Claude was driving. I wasn't paying attention, and all of a sudden, we were going towards the ditch. I didn't see if there was a deer, just that he was going towards the ditch. You didn't tell the police that he tried to kill both of you?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I just was still in shock from all of it, and I just didn't. I just was going to go with the story with the deer because I just was in shock because that's what he wanted me to say, and I just didn't.
What happened?
Notice, Penal Law Section 210.45, in a written instrument, any person who knowingly makes a false statement which such person does not believe to be true has committed a crime under the laws of the state of New York and is punishable by a Class A misdemeanor. And that's what you signed.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any reason why you think, Ms. Knapp, that I should believe you now? Ms. Knapp, I have a couple more questions for you. When did you and the defendant separate?
It was
Around the 1st of February.
So between December
The 5th.
28th and the 1st of February, you still lived together?
No, we did not live
We
together.
just dated,
And you dated the same way that you were dated before?
pretty much.
It wasn't this, not in my eyes, because it was over in my eyes, and I just wanted to get a deductible from him, so I kind of.
Which I did pay. I paid the
He did pay
$500
the- yes.
deductible.
But I figured if I broke up with him, I wouldn't seen any money or nothing, so I kind of just had to hang in there to get my deductible. And
You
And
know,
then a month and a half later, 2 months down the road, she's after with this $5,000.
that's not going to happen.
Thank you.
Miss Knapp, if someone tried to kill me with a car, I wouldn't get into bed with them for a deductible or anything else. And if you did, that's your problem. Bye. Case dismissed.
Parties are excused. You may step out. This is case number 68 on the calendar in the matter of Noma versus Drake. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated.
Mr. Noma, you rented a room in your home to the defendant. According to you, she moved out, and she owes you for the last month's rent. In addition, you claim that she left the place a mess, she caused some damage to the room, and you want to be compensated for that. Ms. Drake says she owes you absolutely nothing. She didn't have to give you any sort of notice for the last month because your conduct gave her the willies. And you're a bit of a control freak, and it was really your conduct that forced her to move. In addition, she says she left the room in substantially the same condition that she found it. It was a mess when she found it. That's the way she left it. Right?
Correct.
How did you find this room, Miss Drake?
Well, when I first moved in, the paint on the walls, part of it was
I don't mean how did you find the... How did you locate this room to rent?
Oh, through a mutual friend.
When?
Late October, the beginning of November.
Did you sign a lease?
No, I did not.
You had a month-to-month tenancy?
Yes, basically.
When did you move in?
I moved in the beginning of November.
Give me the day.
If I have to throw a date out there, probably about the 8th, between the 8th or the 10th.
Did you pay November's rent?
Yes, I did.
What was the rent?
$550.
Did you pay December's rent?
December, I believe I was a bit late on that one. Yes, I did.
Why were you late?
I had just lost my job, and it took me a couple days to get the money, but I came up with it.
What about January?
January, yes, I paid that.
Is that correct, Mr. Noma?
Yes, she did, Your Honor, but she still owes me for a bounce check, which is another case.
Don't tell me about another case. You know, I'm not as young as I used to be. I can only think about one thing
I'm
at
sorry,
a time.
Your Honor. She still does owe me $335 for that.
Are you confusing me again, Mr. Noma?
No, I'm not, Your Honor.
January she paid $550. Is that right?
Correct.
February.
February, I paid.
She did pay, but she owes me late charges for that.
But she paid it?
She paid.
It's March we're talking about.
Yes, we're talking about March, Your Honor.
Okay. What happened in February, Miss Drake, that caused you to move out of the house?
Basically, the living conditions, I couldn't deal with it anymore.
That is really kind of mushy. I don't understand that.
Well, basically, Hiroshi, he became too controlling. My privacy was invaded. People were going into my room. There was an incident where he went into my room while I was going to get the rent to pay the landlord, and he had found something that didn't even belong to me. And
Your Honor,
at that instant when I got back, he came and attacked me in front of all his friends and totally humiliated me. And
what did he find?
He found a bong in my room, which belonged to the guest.
What is that?
Smoking tool to use if you were to smoke drugs in one of my friend's possessions, which I wasn't aware of until that morning before I left.
So he found drug paraphernalia in
Yes,
your room?
Correct.
That's what we used to call drug paraphernalia. Now they call it something else.
Yeah, man.
Okay. How did you find this in her room?
I went into her room February. She knows that I went into her room.
She knows now.
She knows.
Why did you go into her room?
Because, Your Honor, I was looking for
at me.
something. I was looking for something that she told me to look for.
What?
I believe it was a receipt, a contract that we had because she wasn't paying on time. So I had to go into her room and look for that contract, and I told her about it.
Just
Then
a minute, I
found
want you to, Mr. Noma.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
You can't double talk me, Mr. Noma. First you said she told you to go inside the room to look for a contract. Did she tell you where to go and look in her room?
It was on the table.
That's not my question.
Yes, she did, on the table.
She said, go into my room, the contract is on the table.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that what you said, Miss Drake?
No, it's not.
No, Mr.
She's
Noma,
lying, ma'am.
listen to me, because then you said I went into her room. She knew I was going to look for it.
That's
There's a difference. You have to be very careful, Mr. Noma. You may have a just cause today. If you fudge the truth, you're not going to be successful. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So you were snooping around in her room.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. And you found this drug paraphernalia.
Yes, ma'am.
Much better. You see how easy that was? Then you don't get tortured.
I apologize.
Right? I don't like to torture people. It doesn't make me feel terrific. Okay, so you were snooping around in her room and you confronted her with the drug paraphernalia?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was there when you confronted her with the drug paraphernalia?
One of her friends was in the room when I confronted her in her room. I knocked on her door, went in her room, and talked to her about it. She kept denying it. All my friends were outside in the living room. They were not in the room. That room is about 15 by 15. All 7 people cannot fit in a small room.
Fine. Okay, now, Mr. Noma, let's get back to what you are suing for, which is March's rent.
Yes, ma'am.
Was Miss Drake living in her room in March?
No, ma'am. She gave me a 30-day notice at the end of February, an oral agreement that we had.
Did you give him the 30-day notice?
I gave him a notice, yes, probably, I believe it was February 26th or 27th, right before I moved, because I couldn't live there anymore. I told him I can't deal with it. This is my notice.
Okay. And basically what you're telling me is you left because he was invading your space.
Correct. It was unbearable.
And you felt that he had
unlivable.
violated the terms of your tenancy by going into your room without your permission.
Correct.
I agree. Okay?
Yeah.
I agree with you. You moved out on what date?
The 27th of February.
Did you take all of your stuff with you?
No, I did not.
What did you leave there?
I still have yet to move my furniture.
Then you owe him for March rent. Because just because you're behind isn't sleeping in the room, if your furniture and personal property is in the room, you're still renting his room. Do you understand?
Correct.
You can't walk out and say, well, I'm going to go hang out with my friends and I'll go get my property whenever I feel like it. I don't have to pay rent there if I'm not sleeping there.
He didn't say I had to pay the rent for March. He said, we actually settled the date. I don't remember the date exactly. He had told me if you don't have your stuff out by this date. And he said he would not let me get my stuff until I paid the rent.
Just a second. When did you go back there to get your stuff after the 27th of February?
Around between the 10th to the 14th or something like that of March. I went and got all my mail and my clothing, and I had told him if I could leave my furniture in the room, and then he had asked me if one of his friends could sleep on my bed and use my furniture while it was still there, and I agreed to that.
But you had your stuff there without his permission until the 15th of March.
Well, he knew it was...
I don't care what he knew. You had your stuff there, along with your clothing and everything else, until the 15th of March.
Correct.
And he hadn't given you permission between the 27th of February and the 15th of March to leave your stuff there. Only after the 15th of March. Is that right?
Correct.
That's why he's not suing you for April and May and June. So you owe him $550. Now let's get to the condition of the room.
Your Honor, the condition of the room was fine when she moved in. Prior to her moving in, one of our mutual friends was there. He never really had stuff. He never really posted anything on the walls. She posted posters on the walls. There's like
Show me photographs.
I do have photographs of a hole in the door, which one of her friends did. And this is an agreement that we had that she's going to reimburse me of any damages that she incurs in the room.
Who wrote this?
I did.
You're not going to law school, are you?
No, ma'am, but I was planning to.
I don't think so. Okay. Got a cigarette burn. Got some schmutz on the carpet. How did the hole get put in the door?
That was from a water bottle that was tossed by one of my friends to another friend of mine, and they didn't catch it, and it hit the door.
Well, so you have to fix that, right?
Yes.
So you owe him $865, $315 for the door and $550 for rent. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Good luck. Have a happy life.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
It was just too crazy, controlling, and
Her parents would call about 5 times every day looking for her.
Calling my parents behind my back, calling my job, snooping through my things.
I wasn't really snooping around or trying to be sneaky and stuff like that.
Basically, it was just crazy.
At the end, when I finally got fed up, I mean, I can't help people who can't help themselves.
Like living with my parents again, basically.
Don't be fooled by other people. They might be nice, but you don't know what's underneath them.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Ottoman versus Richardson, step forward.
21-year-old student Joseph Ottoman is suing fellow student Timothy Richardson for assaulting him outside a bar. Timothy says a drunken Joseph and his female friends started the fight.
Mr. Ottoman, it is your claim that the defendant assaulted you outside of a bar.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Richardson says that there was an altercation outside the bar, but that altercation was started by you and finished by him, right?
Correct.
When was it?
It was August 28th.
And what's the name of the bar you were in?
The bar I saw these guys in earlier was called the Mystique.
That's where you had been for the evening?
Well, that was one of the places.
Is that the last place that you were in?
No, ma'am.
Well, what's the last place?
A bar called Zydeco's.
How many bars had you been to in total that evening?
Those two.
What time had you arrived at Mystique?
Probably around 10.
Who were you with?
I arrived by myself. I was meeting 2 girls down there.
What time did you leave Mystique?
Oh, must have been around midnight.
And that's when you went to this Zydeco's. And how long did you stay there?
Till it closed.
What time?
2.
Who drove?
We walked. One of the girls I was with lives about 2 blocks away from downtown, and we were walking to her house from there.
What happened when you left Zydeco's and you were walking home at 2 o'clock in the
We
morning?
were walking home to this girl's house. She points them out. They were across the street from us. She's all, there's those guys that were talking to me earlier. They start saying some things. I'm on my phone. I'm not paying attention. All of a sudden, I hear, F you, slut, blah, blah, blah. I say, what's going on here? I go run up to them. And, I mean, it was a very awkward situation. I mean, 2 in the morning, all of us, 21, 22, nobody there was sober. It was a very drunken situation.
Well, that's good.
It could have very
Mr.
easily been avoided.
Mr. Ottoman, that's the first good thing that you've said to me, sir. You said we were all drunk.
Sure.
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Ottoman, you can't speak for anybody else, so I assume that what you're really saying was, I was drunk.
Sure.
So you acted with a certain amount of reckless abandon by running across the street.
I agree.
Now, what happened when you got there?
Words were exchanged.
By the way, who were you talking to on the phone?
I couldn't tell you.
What do you mean you couldn't tell me? You said you were on the phone.
Yeah. Well, actually, I do know it's a girl named Corey. She was one of the ones that was actually there, but she was inside for some reason. I don't know why I was calling her.
I don't understand why you were talking to her if she was inside. Did
Me
she
either.
call you?
I couldn't tell you.
You couldn't because you don't remember?
No, I don't know why I was calling her. I was with her.
Okay. You don't know why you were calling her. So you ran across the street and you said what to Mr. Richardson?
Well, actually, Ashley ran across the street, and I followed her.
Ashley?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was also drunk?
Yes. The one that they were talking to.
What did she say when she went running across the street?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
And you went running after her?
Yes, ma'am.
Keep going.
After I get over there, words were exchanged. Started a little scuffle. I don't know exactly.
What do you mean a scuffle? I don't understand what that means, scuffle.
Sizing each other up, I guess.
I don't know what that means, sizing each other up.
There was no physical contact until I turned around, walking away, about 5 steps away, not even looking at this guy, runs up, hits me in the back of my head, and I fall down on my face. I bust 2 teeth out on the concrete.
Mm-hmm. And you hadn't hit him?
And he jumps in his car.
Just a second. And you hadn't hit him?
No.
And
no physical contact whatsoever.
And you're positive of that?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what the assault is about?
Yes.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
So what you're saying is you were too drunk, you didn't connect?
Right.
He did.
When my back was turned and I was walking away.
Listen to me. You know what happens sometimes?
What?
Doodle happens.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Joseph Ottoman says he was assaulted outside a bar by fellow student Timothy Richardson. Timothy says Joseph started it, and he finished it.
Now we'll hear you, Mr. Richardson.
Well, first off,
Listen to me. See my eyes?
Yeah.
That's where your eyes are going to be. Not on your shoes, not on your hands. Right here.
Okay. where the altercation happened, it was like 2 blocks behind Old Town, where all the bars were.
and I was with some other friends that were out there, and I was walking with them. I lost my ride, and so I got on the cell phone, and as I got off the phone, I heard this Ashley, I presumed was his girlfriend, why the whole thing got started in the first place. And I heard her say something to me. I replied with no vulgarity. I just looked over, I replied nice. I was like, hey girl, what's up? And before she even said anything, he came out and started saying, oh, you know, F you, F this, you talking, blah, blah, all of that. And I was like, I'm not even talking to you, what's your problem? And then he came out into the middle of the street and was challenging me to come to him. And like, I don't have a habit of going and picking a fight when I'm outnumbered and all that. So I was just like, okay, yeah, that's right, I'll keep walking away. He's like, yeah, you know, you effing P word, keep walking away. I was like, all right, buddy, that's right, I'll keep walking away. So when I got to the car, he came and he got in my face, and that was the only time that I remember saying anything vulgar at all, because he was in my face. And and then on the second encounter, I tried to get away, and it's in the police report. He's like, yeah, that's right, get back in your effing Subaru. And he was in my face, and then when he tried to sidestep him, that's when confrontation arose. He pushed me, and the next thing I know, he comes at me, punching me. And he actually connected with the last punch. He hit me in the lip. I fell down. I yelled for Chris, and that's when he rose his hands up, and he's like, I'll F Chris up. And when he backed up and put his hands up, I didn't want it, because I was kind of on my knees. I felt vulnerable. So I jumped up, hit him in the side of the face, and he had fell down. And then his other friend came to us trying to confront us. He's like, oh, what have you done? Because I saw that I hit him once, he fell to the ground, and I knew, he was in bad shape. And then his other friend came to us, and at that point, I thought the best thing to do was to leave, and we got out of there.
Okay. Who's Emily?
She was a lady who lived in the apartment building right in front of where...
Yes! The only one who's not a friend, who says there was a lot of cursing, both sides. Doesn't know who started the physical fight, but there was definitely an acknowledgement of a fight. 3 or 4 punches were thrown by each guy. Then the fella in the white pants hit another fella in the neck or head, and Joe fell face first into the street. I came outside to help. I kept him from getting up before the ambulance arrived. Emily says she saw lots of fighting before you got hit, sir.
It was drunken fighting. Now, you gotta understand, there was no contact made. I understand I was drunk. I admit that.
Listen to me. If you were drunk and there was lots of fighting, she says she saw a lot of fighting. So what you're saying is you were too drunk, you didn't connect.
Right.
He did.
When my back was turned and I was walking away.
Listen to me. He did.
Right.
He connected.
Okay.
You were too drunk to connect.
Right.
Why are you here?
Because I was walking away, calling it a night. When he decided to connect was when I was walking away, trying to get out of there. I didn't want any more to do with the situation. I was already talking to him, face back to this guy. He decides, runs up, hits me in the back of the head, jumps in his car, and takes off.
You know what happens sometimes?
What?
Doodle happens. That's what happens when you're drunk and stupid. You know who started it? You and Ashley. You know who finished it? He did. You started it. He finished it. Stop being a crybaby. That's what happens when you're 21 years old and drunk and stupid. Things happen. And you ended up without 2 front teeth. That's your fault. It's not my fault. It's not his fault. Sometimes when you act drunk and stupid, you get the worst of the fight. Ends up on your face. That's what happens sometimes. So if you want to take this as a good life's lesson, sir, you don't drink until you're so stupid that you don't remember who you're talking to on the phone, what you're talking about. You stay sober enough to remain in control of your actions. And when you don't come crying to courts and say, you got to help me now because I was drunk and stupid. I make myself clear to you. Your case is dismissed.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
जी तो गाइज आज हमारे पास है फ्लावर। आज इसमें हम कलर करेंगे। अगर हमारी वीडियो आपको अच्छी लगी हो तो लाइक, सब्सक्राइब एंड शेयर कीजिएगा। चलें शुरू करते हैं। Okay. जी तो गाइज आज हमने फ्लावर को कलर कर दिया है। अगर हमारी वीडियो अच्छी लगी हो आपको लाइक सब्सक्राइब एंड शेयर कीजिएगा।